Have you ever suspected your partner was hiding something? This wife uncovered a web of lies and deceit that will make you question everything you thought you knew about trust and love. What started as a picture-perfect marriage unraveled into a shocking double life, complete with betrayal, heartbreak, and an unimaginable secret. This is her story. My name is Emily, and for most of my adult life, I believed I was living a fairy tale. At least, that's how it looked from the outside. Friends envied my marriage, colleagues admired my husband, and my family always said we were the perfect couple. David and I met during graduate school in Boston. He was magnetic, charming in a way that seemed effortless, with a laugh that could light up an entire room. We were inseparable. Within a year, we were engaged. A year after that, we stood in front of our loved ones and exchanged vows beneath a canopy of twinkling lights and autumn leaves. I believed every word he said that night. I believed he loved me. Our life together was the kind people posted about online. A modest but beautiful home in the suburbs, a golden retriever named Molly, and eventually, a daughter named Sophie. David worked in finance, and I taught English at a local high school. Every Sunday, we went to the farmer's market. Every anniversary, he wrote me a handwritten letter. It felt real. It felt safe. Until it didn't. The first crack appeared 2 years ago, shortly after David received a big promotion. He started coming home later, often citing work emergencies or client dinners. He was distracted, quieter than usual, sometimes even snappy. I convinced myself he was just stressed. Promotions came with pressure, right? But then the phone calls started. He would step out to answer them, always out of earshot, sometimes speaking in hushed tones. Once I asked him who it was. He smiled and said, "Just a client. He's a bit high maintenance." That smile, once so warm, suddenly felt practiced, polished, like something he wore, not something he felt. One night, he came home late again, the scent of a perfume I didn't wear clinging to his shirt. I told myself it could have been a coworker's hug, maybe even someone on the subway. But something inside me stirred. A quiet voice I'd long ignored began to speak. And it didn't stop. From then on, I started noticing everything. The way he shielded his phone, how he'd leave the room when I entered, how he locked his briefcase. Small things, but they built a mountain of doubt I couldn't ignore. I confided in my friend Rachel. We'd been best friends since college, and she knew me better than anyone. "Emily," she said gently, "do you want the truth? Or do you want to keep pretending?" I wanted the truth, even if it shattered me. The emotional toll was relentless. I couldn't eat. I barely slept. My mind raced with possibilities. Was it just one woman? Was it someone I knew? Was it worse than I imagined? Late at night, I'd sit in our living room and stare at the family portraits hanging on the wall. The smiles felt like lies, the joy frozen in time, mocking the storm inside me. I started to doubt everything, every moment, every memory. And yet, I still wasn't ready to confront him. I needed proof. I needed to be sure. Because if I was going to destroy our life, I had to know I wasn't wrong. So I started watching, listening, collecting pieces of a puzzle I never wanted to solve. That was the beginning of the end. I began my silent investigation with a trembling heart. I didn't want to be right, but I couldn't ignore the gut instinct that something was terribly wrong. I told myself I would observe, collect facts, not emotions, and if I found nothing, I'd let it go. But deep down, I already knew. The first thing I did was install his second iCloud account on David's old iPad, the one we used to watch movies on with Sophie. He hadn't touched it in months, so it was the perfect way to monitor any photos or messages synced from his iPhone. I didn't feel proud of myself, but I felt desperate. Within days, I saw the first text. It was from a contact saved as Jamie, dentist. Harmless enough, except the message said, I missed last night. Your hands, your mouth, your smell. I froze. My hand shook as I scrolled. The conversation stretched back weeks, and it was anything but professional. He wasn't just having an affair. He was deeply involved. The tone was intimate, possessive. There were photos, hotel receipts, even an Airbnb confirmation. The Airbnb booking caught my attention. It was in Cambridge, just 20 minutes away. A 2-bedroom apartment. Booked every other weekend for the past 4 months. I felt the ground tilt beneath me. I wasn't just dealing with a fling. This was a second life. That weekend, when David said he had a conference, I followed him. I parked across the street and waited. My breath caught in my chest when I saw him, dressed casually, laughing, walking hand in hand with a woman I had never seen before. She had dark curly hair and wore a red sweater. Her other hand was holding a toddler. My heart stopped. He kissed her on the cheek. Then, he picked up the child and swung her into the air. The little girl giggled, calling out, "Daddy." I couldn't breathe. I drove away. I don't remember how I made it home. In one moment, everything collapsed. Not only was my husband cheating, he had another family. A child. A woman who thought she was the only one. And I had been living a lie for years, smiling in pictures, building a life with a man I didn't know. I sat in our kitchen all night, unable to cry, just empty. I kept thinking about our daughter, about how David would tuck Sophie in at night, kiss her forehead and tell her stories. Did he do the same with the other child? Did he love them more? Did he love me at all? I didn't sleep. I couldn't. The next morning, I called Rachel and told her everything. She came over within the hour, hugged me without a word, and helped me gather every piece of evidence. Screenshots, location history, text logs, photos. We organized them into a folder. I knew what had to come next, the confrontation. But I wasn't ready. Not yet. I needed to look him in the eyes with everything laid bare and ask the only question that mattered now. Who are you really? But I already knew the answer. Not the man I married. 3 days passed before I could bring myself to look David in the eyes. During that time, I went through the motions of life, packing Sophie's lunch, showing up to work, brushing my teeth, all on autopilot. It was as if my body kept moving while my soul had gone missing. Every time David walked through the door, I felt a physical urge to scream. But I didn't. Not yet. I needed the confrontation to be deliberate, controlled. I didn't want to be the hysterical wife. I wanted him to remember the moment I dismantled every lie with quiet precision. That Friday, I cooked dinner as usual. Sophie was at her grandmother's for a sleepover. David walked in, loosened his tie, and kissed me on the cheek like nothing was wrong. Like he wasn't living 2 lives. We ate in near silence. After the plates were cleared, I asked him to sit. My voice calm, my hands folded, my heart a hammer in my chest. "David," I began, "I need you to be honest with me." He looked up, confused. Of course. I placed the folder on the table between us. Inside, printouts of the texts, hotel receipts, location data, and a photo I took of him holding the toddler in front of the Cambridge apartment. He stared at it without touching. For a moment, the only sound was the hum of the refrigerator. Then he said quietly, "I can explain." Those 3 words broke something inside me. I didn't want an explanation. I wanted the truth. But the truth had already spoken for itself. "Do you love her?" I asked. He hesitated, then nodded. "Do you love me?" A pause, then a whisper, "I don't know." The tears came before I could stop them. Not sobs, just hot, silent rivers down my cheeks. He reached for my hand and I pulled it back. "How long?" 3 years, he said. We met at a work event. It just happened. 3 years. He had been lying to me every single day for over 1,000 days. birthdays, anniversaries, our daughter's milestones, all with that lie curled up in his mouth. I stood. You need to leave. David didn't argue. He looked ashamed, but not devastated. Maybe he had already mourned our marriage in secret in her arms. He packed a bag and left that night. I sat on the living room floor after he was gone, holding Sophie's favorite stuffed animal. I didn't know how to tell her. I didn't know how to explain that her father, her hero, was not who we thought he was. The next morning, she asked, "Why didn't Daddy come home?" I swallowed 1,000 truths and told her only what I could. "Daddy's going to stay somewhere else for a while." She nodded. "Is he mad at me?" That broke me. No, baby. Never. The days that followed were an emotional whiplash. Anger, sadness, disbelief. I would laugh at a memory, then collapse in tears 5 minutes later. I replayed every moment of our marriage in my mind, trying to spot the signs I'd missed. People talk about heartbreak like it's a single event, a moment when your heart shatters. But for me, it was slow and steady like erosion. Every day chipped away a little more until I didn't recognize myself anymore. Friends offered support. My mom cried with me. Rachel stayed overnight more than once. But the nights were the hardest, when the silence in the house echoed his absence. I knew I couldn't go back, even if he begged, even if he cried. Something fundamental had been destroyed. Trust. Yes, but also identity. I wasn't just mourning my husband. I was mourning the version of myself who believed in him. This wasn't just the end of a marriage. It was the beginning of something else. Something raw, something painful, something real. In the weeks following David's departure, I felt like I was walking through the ruins of a life I once loved. Every room in the house held memories of laughter, of intimacy, of the lies I hadn't seen. The bed felt too big, the mornings too quiet. The silence wasn't peaceful anymore. It was heavy, accusatory. At first, I tried to stay busy. I organized closets, cleaned obsessively, took Sophie on long walks, anything to distract myself from the ache that wouldn't go away. But grief doesn't disappear just because you refuse to look at it. It waits, patiently, and then it crashes down. One night, after putting Sophie to bed, I sat in the bathroom, stared at myself in the mirror, and asked a question I had avoided for weeks. What did I do wrong? The truth? Nothing. But it took me months to believe that. Rachel insisted I speak to a therapist. At first, I resisted. I didn't want to relive the betrayal over and over. But I was unraveling. The sessions became my lifeline. In that quiet room, with someone who didn't judge or try to fix me, I started peeling back the layers of hurt. We talked about everything: my need for control, my tendency to internalize blame, my fear that I wasn't enough. Slowly, I began to realize something powerful. David's betrayal wasn't about me. It was about his choices, his selfishness, his need for validation. I had been faithful, loving, devoted. That wasn't weakness, it was strength. I started journaling, writing letters I'd never sent. Some to David, some to the woman he cheated with, but most were to myself, reminders that I mattered, that I was still whole, even after everything was broken. One day, while cleaning out the garage, I found a box of old photographs, vacations, holidays, Sophie's first steps. I sat cross-legged on the cold floor and cried. Not because I missed David, but because I missed the version of myself who believed in that life. I grieved her too. Eventually, the crying slowed. I began to reclaim my space. I bought new sheets, painted the bedroom a different color, took down the wedding photos and replaced them with artwork Sophie made. I didn't erase the past, but I made room for something new. I also started talking more openly with Sophie, age-appropriate truths. She asked if Daddy was coming home, and I said no. She asked if it was her fault, and I held her face in my hands and said, "Never. This was never about you." The healing didn't come all at once. It came in pieces. In the way I learned to sleep through the night again. In the way I really laughed at something Sophie said. In the way I stopped checking David's social media. And then one morning, I looked in the mirror and didn't see a broken woman. I saw someone brave. I started running again. Something I hadn't done in years. I signed up for a 5K, not to prove anything to anyone, but to myself. To feel strong. To feel alive. I also started writing a blog. At first, it was anonymous, just a place to unload the weight in my chest. But women began to find me. They left comments, shared their own stories. Some were fresh in their pain. Others had survived it years ago. But all of them made me feel less alone. I realized something powerful. My story, no matter how painful, could be someone else's lantern. I wasn't just healing. I was helping. Not because I was perfect, but because I was real. It's been over a year since that night I asked David to leave. I still remember the way the air felt in my lungs, thick with disbelief and grief. I remember the trembling in my hands as I packed away the remnants of our life. But more than anything, I remember the silence after he was gone, not empty, but full of possibility. Healing isn't a straight road. There are days when the past sneaks up on me. When I pass a certain restaurant or hear a song that once meant something. But those moments don't break me anymore. They remind me of how far I've come. People sometimes ask, how did you survive it? The truth is, I didn't just survive. I rebuilt. I grew. I learned to stand in my own story, not as someone ashamed of being betrayed, but as someone who chose herself. I learned that pain is a brutal but honest teacher. It strips away illusions and leaves you raw, but it also forces you to confront who you are when no one is looking. I found strength in places I didn't know existed, in quiet mornings, in deep breaths, in the sound of my daughter's laughter. I stopped asking, why me, and started asking, what now? That question changed everything. I began to live with intention. I said no to people who drained me. I set boundaries without guilt. I chose relationships that made me feel safe, seen, and whole. And slowly I began to trust again, not in someone else, but in myself. For anyone listening who's in the thick of betrayal, who feels shattered and lost, I want you to know something. You are not broken. You are not foolish. You are not weak for having loved deeply. Someone else's betrayal is not a reflection of your worth. It is a reflection of their character. You are still whole, even with the cracks, especially with the cracks, because that's where the light gets in. Give yourself permission to grieve, to rage, to cry on the bathroom floor at 2 a.m. But don't stay there, because there is life after heartbreak. And it's not just life, it's freedom. Freedom to rewrite your story, to love again on your own terms, to wake up without anxiety, to fall asleep in peace, to laugh without flinching, to trust your intuition and protect your heart, not with walls, but with wisdom. I don't know what the future holds, but I know I'm no longer afraid of it. I've walked through fire and come out softer, not weaker. So to the woman out there, staring at the ceiling in the middle of the night, wondering if she's enough, hear me. You are. You always have been. And no matter how your story began, you have the power to choose how it ends. With grace, with courage, with you, standing tall in your truth, finally free. If this story moved you or reminded you of your own journey, don't keep it to yourself. Tap that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear this, and subscribe to Lies Unveiled for more true stories of betrayal, healing, and strength. Because sometimes the truth isn't just painful, it's what sets us free.